Right, thanks very much for coming along, everybody. Okay, so yes, webinar number 4, viewports, viewport scaling, annotative objects. So I'll be blasting through it all. Now, get ready with your pens and papers, scribble things down as we're going through it. I am recording this session, so when it's all finished, what we do is we upload this session to our website so that you can go to our Graitec website and download it and go through it at a slower pace. You need to jot notes down, all that kind of thing. Let me just mute everybody now. Let's have a look. Oh, mute. There we go, mute everybody, just in case somebody's talking in the background there on it. Just upset anybody. So I'm going to run through a quick PowerPoint and I'm going to jump into AutoCAD and we'll crack on with it. So, next slide. Oops, here we go. So that's me. My name's Steve Crowe, as you can see there. I joined the company in January 1989, and I've been using AutoCAD now for about 35 years. So, but I still don't class myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination. There's masses and masses in the program. I run training courses on the various aspects. I get people off the ground, get them up and running, and I do advanced courses, I do a bit of programming in AutoCAD as well, and I run the 3D courses. So yes, but I also cover Revit. So my main role, as it says there, is training and support, primarily AutoCAD and Revit. And the feedback I've had just on these 3 seminars I've done is that one of them there from Tom, look, the webinars are the most useful tips and tricks I've ever had in any CAD webinar. Blimey, how about that? Cost me a fortune to get that feedback. Anyway, the next one, Andrew, very good webinar, practical tips, didn't know they're in there. So the things I'm going to be showing you, they're not necessarily new features or anything like that. They're probably in the AutoCAD you've got already. So it's nothing new. You've got the program. It's just a matter of learning these tools and techniques and tips and tricks in there. Now, when I'm on support calls, I know the problems that people come across. And more importantly, I resolve them as well. So that's the thing. So people who purchase support contracts, they send me across the drawing file that's giving problems. I fix the drawing file for them, email it back to them, and they can crack on with the work. So yes, it works really well. So let's have a look. So next one. So Graitec is a company then. We've got offices all over Europe there. Our head office is in Paris. The UK head office is in Southampton. In the UK, we've got branches in Durham. I'm normally based in the Durham office. We have an office in Shipley near Bradford, and then Nottingham, obviously head office in Southampton. And we've got offices all over Europe, as you can see there, and also across in America and Canada. So yeah, we're doing all right as a company in terms of keeping busy. I'm just flat out busy training, primarily AutoCAD, but also doing some Revit as well. Key facts, we've got Graitec there. So the company itself is over 30 years old. As I say, I've been with AutoCAD now, Autodesk and Graitec in its various guises for 32 years, I think it is now, January 1989. Over 48 offices, it says there now. So we're still growing as a company, even in these hard times. We're still making things work, helping people out, working from home and all that kind of thing. Over 550 staff there, and I think we've just taken on some more people. So yes, we're a very buoyant company, keeping going, and got thousands of projects with customers all worldwide. And we've got a good to excellent customer service support rating. As it said, 50,000 support cases per year. So yes, if I'm not training either on site or in our offices, then I'm in the office on support calls. So I'll give you my email address towards the end. Oh, well, I'll give you my email address if you've got any support queries and see if we can help you. So why us then, it says, the Graitec story, why us? Well, we supply and support all the Autodesk products. We've got both the sales expertise and the technical backup and training. We deliver training on all the programs. And what I'm going to be showing you today, if you like, extracts from my training sessions. I was training yesterday up at the Nissan car plant in Sunderland. And for those who are logging in from abroad, that's Sunderland North in the northeast of the UK. So yeah, we do all the VR stuff as well, virtual reality. So drop your buildings from Revit models into your VR software. So yeah, busy. So yeah, so today's, I'll just a bit more detail there, showing how to create a standard set of scales for your drawing files. Let me just see if I can fold this. I've got a control panel. There we go. Your drawings may well show an Imperial scale list when you go into them. You know, why does it show that, and how do you resolve it? How do you get rid of it? And then Annotative Objects. Now, Annotative Objects have been AutoCAD for quite a few years, and it's still as difficult to say Annotative Objects, but I'm getting there with it. But you can mess it up really quickly if you don't know what's going on. Now, after the end of this session, I'm hoping that the more you're going to take on board these Annotative Objects. It is easy when you know how they work, but it is also very easy to mess them up if you don't know what's going on, or you give your drawing file to somebody else who doesn't know how to use Annotative Objects, and they can soon mess up your drawing files. So that's one of the drawbacks of Annotative Objects. You can take your existing drawing files and make them annotative. So things that can be annotative are text, dimensions, hatching, blocks, multi-leaders, and that kind of thing. They can all be made to be annotative. So they can change size based on the viewport scale, automatically or otherwise. I'll go through it. So, setting a standard scale list, removing relative scales, applying scales to viewports, maximizing minimizing viewports, and so on. So let's have a look. So I'm going to come out of that. Oops. There we go. Right, get your pen and paper and write my email address down there, look. steve.crow, as in bird, at graitec.co.uk. So I'll be flying through this at a fair old pace, and unfortunately I won't have a chance to take any questions. So if you have a question about the webinar, email it to me. I can spend some time putting together, formulating a more considered answer to your questions, and I'll email you back again. Not a problem. So yeah, drop my email address down there, and then you can get in touch with me later on. Even if it's just to ask, where do I find the webinar when I've saved it and downloaded it to our website, and I can send you a link to the webinar afterwards. So as soon as it's all recording on screen at the moment. So there we go. Right. So come out of that, close that, and if I close that, and there we go. I'm in AutoCAD. Now I'm using AutoCAD 2021 here, but the tools I'm going to be showing you are not specific to this. It goes back quite a few releases to the earlier versions of AutoCAD. It's not all new here. It's not all new stuff. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is this thing with the scales, in the drawing file, and why it shows odd, weird scales in drawing. So I'm opening up here. It's not a sample drawing. This is a proper working drawing from a company, a proper working drawing. Okay, so here it is. Load the drawing file up. The drawing file on the screen here. Yep, not a problem. Zoom in and out on it. And there it is. There's your drawing file. Nothing any different to your drawing files on the screen there. But you go down to your scale list on the corner here, just where your scales are, and it shows a list of Imperial scales. So what's going on there? Really weird. Now, the trouble is with drawing files, you quite often don't know the history behind the drawing file. And when I'm running my training sessions, I always tell people time and time again, don't trust any drawing you get off anybody. You need to always check and double check to make sure that the thing's set up correctly. For example, in this drawing file here, on the coordinates at the bottom there, it is suggesting we're in metric units, in millimeters. Okay, if I type the letters UN for units, yeah, it says we're in decimal there. Now I notice that when we are in here, that the units to scale inserted content is set to unitless. Now that's the first issue with this drawing file. If I insert any symbol off the internet and it's in meters or millimeters or feet and inches or whatever, it's not going to necessarily come in correct, because this drawing is set to unitless. It might as well be set to useless, because you need to have that set correctly so that it scales your symbols properly when they come in. So I'm going to change that to millimeters, because I know this drawing's done in millimeters. I did a check distance across a doorway. It's about a meter across, 1,000 mil across a doorway. So I know it's in millimeters. So that was the first issue with this particular drawing. Also, and it's all linked in this, it's all linked together. if I go to load some line types into this drawing file, so LT for the line type manager, or however you look at line types. Now, I'm not covering line types today, so I'm not going to spend any time in here, but that's another issue people have with metrical Imperial, getting line types to display correctly. But if I go to load in some line types, in there, look, load, I can see straight away it's defaulting to the metric definition file. So that's also going to cause problems. Sorry, not the metric one, the Imperial one. That's the Imperial line type definition file there. The metric definition file is AutoCAD ISO. So I suspect that when this drawing was started, somebody used an Imperial template. So we need to sort that out before we can even start to look at the scales. I mean, yes, you could sort the scales out straight away, but you know, we need to know why. We need to know why those Imperial scales are there. So cancel that, cancel that. There is another setting in the background called measurement. So if you just type the word measurement at the command line, measurement, oops, can't even spell now, M-E-A-S, measurement, there we go, on the autocomplete, and it's set to 0. It's either on or off, 0 or 1. 0 is Imperial and 1 is metric. So now our drawing should be fully converted to metric. So when I go and check to load a line type in, so LT, load, bingo, we're now loading in the correct metric definition file for line types. So now this drawing is flagged correctly as metric, we can now go and reset our scale list. Now the temptation with scale lists is to come into here, scroll to the bottom, pick onto custom, and start editing them in here, doing an edit, an add, a delete, and so on, picking on them in here, look, delete, and carry on like that. That's the wrong way to do it, the wrong way. I'm going to cancel this off, because you don't do it like that, because that means you have to do it on the next drawing, and the next drawing, and the next drawing, and you just end up wasting your time, having to sort every single drawing out the long way around. This is what you need to do. Go into your options, so cursor on the command line, select options, that's a quick, easy way to get in, and then go straight to the user preferences tab up there, look, user preferences, and in there you have an option to set the default scale list for all your drawings on the system. Now it will set it in your AutoCAD, but not in the drawings just yet. So watch what you do here, default scale list, and here we go, we have a metric and an Imperial scale list. And notice that the default scale list only goes up to 1 to 100, but it's also got some obscure non-ISO scales in there as well, 1 to 4, 1 to 8, 1 to 16. I'm going to dump those out. You don't use those scales. Use scale like 1 to 2, 1 to 10, 20, get rid of the 30 as well. I'll get rid of the 40, 20, 50, 100, and so on. Now, there's also other scales. Now, this list, the description there is, if I go and add in, it is just a description. So if I can just type in 1 to 200, oops, 1 to 200, and in the units, this is the bit that does the work, 200 in there, look. Okay on that. So add in 1 to 500, and the bit does the work on there, 500. Okay, add another one in, add 1 to 1000, and then 1000 in there. Okay on that, and then add in, I'll add 1 to 1250. That seems to be a standard sort of mapping type scale. Now you can use this as well, because some people like to work in meters in the drawing files. Now if you're using AutoCAD Civil or AutoCAD Map, it'll handle all that with your viewports and viewport scaling quite nicely. The trouble with standard AutoCAD, it's really designed and hinges around millimeters. But you can go in here and create, if you like, a millimeter list, scale list, and a meter list by setting the drawing units to 1,000 difference in there. So when you pick on the 1 to 10 scale list, then it'll do it a 1 to 10 on a meter drawing with a millimeter sheet, because obviously all your sheets are still defined in millimeters. So it's a useful way to set up a meter scale list. So do an OK on that, OK on that. So there's my list now that I want to use in my drawing files. I'll leave those in there. Well, no, I'll get rid of that one. Delete. I'll add in 1 to 5. 5 to 1 rather, add in 5 to 1, okay. Is it 5? Is that the syntax of those? Yeah, it is, okay on that. So I check the syntax on another one there. Edit, yeah, there I go, okay on that, and okay on that, and okay on that. So now when we come to our scale list here, look, come into the custom, and all you need to do is pick the reset, your metric scales, and there they are. It's as quick as that now in every drawing, as quick as that, and okay on that. Now that one there, I probably can't delete it because it's being used somewhere in one of the things. So I can get rid of it later on, that one. It's being used, that scale, that's why I can't get rid of it. There's maybe a viewport set to it already. So there we go. So now we've got the drawing set correctly. Now we can start to look at our viewports and viewport scaling. Now I'm going to take you straight from square one really with these viewports and viewport scaling and these layout tabs. Now I'm going to recommend and suggest you change some settings in the background first in AutoCAD to make the next bit easier to understand. So I'm going to go back into options again, and the thing that confuses people here is this area down here where it says layout elements. And I would suggest, and I'll come back in later on and show you why I turn it off. I'm going to untick all of these boxes in here, look in layout elements, untick all of those to make the next bit easier to understand. Leaving the top one ticked, which is display these layout model tabs. Doing okay on that. Now you won't see anything change. You won't see anything change just now. The drawing looks just the same. What I'm going to do now is to make, this is how you do it from scratch, make a brand new layout tab. Now normally you shouldn't need to do this because your layout tabs come through from your drawing template file. So right click, new layout, and it's made a layout 2 down there, look, at the bottom of the screen. So if I click on layout 2, click onto layout 2, and it takes us into what's called paper space. So what is paper space then? Now I know lots of you know this already, but for those who can't quite get their head around it, I'm going to show you. On the model tab, we have an icon in the corner down here telling us what's in what's called model space. If I go and check a distance or anything anywhere in this drawing file, I'll come into here, look, if I just check a distance across that doorway, DI for distance, and go from there across to there, it tells me in real world units, it's 1045 across that doorway, big real world units. So you draw full scale 1:1 when you're on the model tab, full scale 1:1 when you're on the model tab. So when I go to layout 2, I'm into what's called paper space. So what is paper space? Got a set square in the corner, looks like my drawing's disappeared. And what it is, imagine on that building site, you've got a porter cabin, a site cabin. And we've just stepped inside that site cabin, and we're looking at a blank wall. We can't see out behind it where they're building that floor plan of the building. We can't see out behind it because we're looking at the blank porter cabin wall. Now notice you've got all our drawing tools there still. I can go and scribble on the porter cabin wall, no problem. Scribble on there. Draw anything I want on the screen on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pre-printed sheet of paper, like an A1 sheet or an A0 sheet. I'll do an A0 sheet and stick it on the wall of the porter cabin. Now I haven't got a sheet of paper, so I'm going to actually draw one using the rectangle tool. So rectangle tool, the first corner point is 0,0, and the other corner for an A0 sheet is 1189,841. And there is an A0 sheet of paper, an A0 sheet of paper. And if I go near this corner here, looking at the units down here at the bottom of the screen, there we go, that corner there is 0,0. This corner over here is 1189,841 or thereabouts. I could do an ID point. Now again, I get drawings sent to me where the guys are telling me, I can't print it, it's not coming out to scale. And I check the sheet of paper and it's nothing like the size of a sheet of paper. So it is a common problem with people getting the sheet sizes wrong in terms of it could be just 10 millimeters across the sheet. And of course, you and I know we can zoom in to the tolerance on a nut and bolt. So even though it's a 10 mil sheet of paper, you can still zoom in on it. Right, I'm just going to make this one look a bit more like a sheet of paper because you'll have your notes column down the side there. There's your notes column with your title block in the corner there. As I say, you wouldn't normally have to do this. Your drawing number, your scale, date, drawn by. I'm just doing this quickly by eye, just for speed's sake. I haven't got a lot of time in this webinar. I'm used to talking for 3 days at a time. You don't want to listen to me for 3 days, trust me. Right, so there's my sheet of paper. Now, notice that when we're in paper space, we've got a new tab across the top called Layout. And I'm going to manually create a viewport here. Now, I'm going to show you later on how we can automate this to a degree. So go to the Layout tab, there it is, and on there, we have the option to create a rectangular viewport. I'm going to place a rectangular viewport in this corner over here, click, and come down to about there, click, and there's my viewport. And you may or may not see something inside the viewport. So what we've done there is we've punched a hole through the sheet of paper, through the porta cabin wall, and we are looking outside to the model outside the building plan. If I double left click into there, I can zoom up on that view there. There's the view in there, look. And we've now got a viewport scale down here. We can set the viewport scale. Try 1 to 100, maybe a bit further away than that. 1 to 200, a bit further away. 1 to 500. Yeah, there we go, 1 to 500. So if I just pop that into there, 1 to 500. Can't quite see it all, so in paper space, come back out again, select the edge of the viewport and drag it out so we can see the rest of the building. And there we go, there's a 1 to 500 viewport. Now the important thing is when you make a viewport, there it is, 1 to 500, you have to make sure that you lock it. Because if you don't, if you accidentally click your roller, 1 click forward, 1 click back, then you've lost the viewport scale, look. It's now not 1 to 500. Now, yes, you can go back and reset it in here, look, 1 to 500. But look, it must have panned to one side slightly. So the trick with viewports is to get it set up correctly to the correct scale, pan it around, and then there on your status bar is the padlock to lock the viewport. Click and it's locked. There we go. So there's one locked viewport. I'm going to place another viewport down this side here. Put a viewport in there. Okay. And you can hit the enter key to repeat the last command, which is create viewport. And I'll place a viewport down there. Okay. Actually, I think I was going to make this one a bit shorter. I'm going to put it in about to there. I'm going to go into this viewport here. Zoom on this part of the building here. I'm going to set this one to a viewport scale of 1 to 100. Okay. And lock it. If I grab the viewport boundary, I can drag it down so I can see more in there. Actually, I should unlock it and pan it down a bit. There we go. So I can see that view there. And then padlock the viewport of 1 to 100. This viewport here, I'm going to go and zoom in this area here and make this one, sorry, that was 1 to 200, that one. Unlock it. 1 to 200. That's better. I can see all that wing of the building now. Padlock it. And this viewport here, try it at 1 to 100. And there we go. Padlock that view. Come out to here and drag it up to there somewhere. Now, of course, when the viewport is locked, it can be a problem because if I go into the viewport now, when I scroll in and out with my mouse, the whole viewport goes in and out, which is great. So, but you might want to see what's just above the viewport. You might want to see what's going on just up here. You might want to line something up with these objects on the screen here. Now, what you can do, you can actually what they call maximize the viewport. So one way to maximize the viewport is when you're in paper space, if you double click on your viewport boundary, it maximizes the viewport. So it just acts almost like as if you're in model space. You can zoom in and out, look, pan around. So if I wanted to draw a line which lines up with the end of this, my snap's turned on, it lines up with the end of this, which I couldn't see in the viewport, and it comes down to here. There we go. I can drop a line in down there. So when I go, if I double click on that blue boundary on the screen, there we go, it goes back to the viewport, and there's the line coming down. Now I couldn't line it up previously because it was off the edge of the viewport. But by maximizing the viewport, you go into what almost like a pseudo model space. So double click on the boundary there, you go and pan around to your heart's content, work in, zoom in and out, go and look at the detail, come back out again, double click your boundary, and it goes back to your locked viewport scale. There we go. Okay, so what we did there then was we created a brand new layout tab from scratch. Now with these viewports, obviously I've sized them there manually on the screen, and I was changing the scale using the scale button down here. Now what you can also do is this. If I just come into here, grab that viewport there and just drag it down around, tight around that shape, turn my snaps off, put it tight around that wing of the building there. Here we go, give into there like that. Okay, now you'll notice that there is a scale button nowadays in the middle of the viewport. Now if I use the scale button down here, it'll change the size of the view in the viewport. However, if I use this scale list here on this upside down arrow, and this is the same scale list down as we have in the other place, but down here, look, I can change the scale of the view, but it doesn't change the scale of the view in the viewport. It resizes the viewport accordingly. So there's the 1 to 100 view, there's a 1 to 200 view, and there's a 1 to 500 view. So it's physically changing the size of the viewport, which might be a bit more useful. Otherwise, you end up having to do as I do earlier on there and start to change the size of the boundary afterwards. So that's quite useful. That's the upside down arrow thingy in the middle of the viewport. That's another way of changing the scale, but it adjusts the viewport size as well. Now I mentioned, that's right, we changed some settings, didn't I, before? We changed some settings before I went into this screen, into the layout tab. I changed some settings in the options. Let me show you why I changed them now. I'm going to go back into options, and the default is for these boxes to be ticked. Tick, tick, tick. And look, in here, it says create a viewport automatically when you make a new layout. Now, I didn't want a viewport filling the whole sheet. I wanted a viewport that was 3 viewports, in fact. So I don't like it creating viewports automatically. So I'm going to do an OK on that. And that's what we would have seen if I hadn't unticked those boxes. Now, I'm sure you've all seen this on the screen. And for somebody who's not quite familiar with paper-based model space, they look at that and they're thinking, well, what's this on the screen here? And they're trying to select it, trying to delete it. What is it? Now, when we drew the rectangle for the sheet of paper there, we started on 0,0. This thing, whatever it is, starts down here at a seemingly random position on the screen. Then suddenly people twig and they think, oh yeah, that's my drawing sheet. That's my piece of paper. Now, they then think, oh dear, well, my drawing is too big. So what they start doing is shrinking their borders down to fit into this piece of paper here. And then they send the drawing through to the plotter. They go to the plotter, pick up the piece of paper. There's a tiny little dot in one corner of the sheet. That's the drawing, and a big empty sheet of paper wasted. So this can be very confusing. So that's my reason for turning it off in the options. So I'm going to go back into options again, right click options, untick create viewport. I'll make my own viewports, thank you very much. I don't need to see a paper shadow. That's the program that's messing about, looking like a floating piece of paper. Display paper background, printable area. How does anybody know what plotter I've got to be able to set a printable area? The printable area varies from plotter to plotter, driver to driver, and operating system to operating system. So you can't just put in a generic printable area. If I do a webinar on printing and plotting, I can show you within less than a minute how to show what the maximum printable area is on your plotter with your setup without wasting a single sheet of paper. Within a minute, I can show you the printable area on your setup. But if I do a webinar on printing, I might show, well, I will show that folks that. So do an OK on that. So there we go. So we know for a fact that this is an A0 piece of paper, and we've got an A0 plotter. So anything I put with inside the sheet will print. Anything outside the sheet won't print. It's as simple as that. There's none of these shadows or anything like that confusing the issue. Let's move that inside the sheet. There we go. Right. So that's doing the whole thing from scratch. So if you were tasked with creating layout tabs, then that's what you would do. So what I'm going to look at now is what happens when you get a drawing in from somebody else. It won't have your layout tabs, because it's okay setting up a drawing template file with your layout tabs in. What if I do a start a new drawing based on a particular template file, an AEC millimeters template, there we go, that one there for example. If I start a brand new drawing based on my template, it's got the sheet sizes in there already. Look, they're already there, which is great. But if you get somebody else's drawing in, it won't have your layout tabs in. And you certainly don't want to make them from scratch every time. So this is what you need to do. Go to your layout tabs down there, right click and say from template. So I'm in somebody else's drawing, which I've just received. It's got all their layout tabs in, but I want my layout tabs in with my logo and everything, my title borders. From template, go and find my template file. So there's my template file. Do an open on that, and inside that template file, there are my drawing borders. So I can select the whole lot at once, OK on that, and they all appear down here. Look, there they all are. So down the bottom there now, I've got all my layout tabs. Well, nearly all of them. I had 4 of them in mind. Where's my A4 one gone? My A4 layout tab has disappeared suddenly. And this is another, not an issue or a problem, but it's something to be aware of. Now, I'm sure you're all creating loads of layout tabs across the bottom of your sheets. And don't forget to rename them, give them a decent, relevant name. Rename, so it's an A0 factory floor plan layout. An A0 factory floor plan layout. And there it is. And now suddenly I can only see them up to my A2. So where's my A3 and A4 gone? Well, I'll tell you where they've gone. It's now on this pull down list here on the screen, which in my mind is a real pain. To go to your other layouts now, you have to pick that pull down list there. You have to go on that pull down list there now to go and pick your other layouts. So this is what I suggest you do. If you do a right click on any of these layout tabs, you can dock this above the status bar. Dock above status bar. So now you can see your layout tabs all the way across the screen without having to pick on that nasty, horrible list that falls down the screen. So there's my A4, there's my A3, there's my A0, and there's my model. So you can see your layout tabs on them there perfectly all right. Now you can reorder them down there. Look, if I drag it to one side, you can pull all your sections together or all your detail views together. You can even copy them down there. So if I drag it across and hold the control key at the same time, there we go. I've made now 2 factory floor plan layouts. And I can adjust the viewports in one to be different to the viewports in another. So you can drag them across and reorder them or even copy them down there. Now, if there are any that you don't require, you can do a right click down there and do a delete. And there we go. You can get rid of them off the screen if you don't want them. Right. Now I'm going to go to this A0 one here, look. I'm going to go to the A0 one here. And I'm just going to delete this existing viewport, because I'm going to now show you how it works in the later versions of AutoCAD, the new way of working with viewports and viewport scaling and creating these viewports. So you do it by creating what's called views. You create a view. So in this drawing here, let's have a look. I want to have a viewport that's looking at this part of the drawing. Looking at this part of the drawing, okay? So on the View tab on the ribbon, on the Named Views panel here, there's an option to create what's called a new view. So you take a snapshot of an area of the screen, a new view. And I'm going to call it, because it's in this area of this is a spray shop, at a well-known car manufacturer in the northeast of England. This is the spray shop. I mean, it's massive. Just for cancel that, if I double click, it's just a massive building. It's just one building on the site. This one building on the site, and this is. I'm not sure what this particular area does, but I mean, there could be robots or whatever. I don't know, paint mixing booths or whatever. But I'm going to make a view of this area here. So new view. I'm going to call it top coat area. Top coat area. And notice, well, there's a fold down thing there. Look. Notice in here, it'll take a snapshot of the current layer settings as well, which is really useful. It'll take a snapshot of the current layer settings. And I'm going to tell it, I'm going to define the view window. So define the window. Where is it? Where are we looking at? What's the area of the screen we're looking at? Well, it's this area just here. So I'm going to click from there down to there is the area I'm interested in. You see there? Let's put a window around the area that I'm interested in. If you're happy with that, as the command line says, press enter to accept that. Now I've made it what's called a top coat area. And OK on that. So I now have saved away a view called top coat area. OK. Now I'm going to turn on all the layers in this drawing file. Turn on all the layers. So here we go. If I go and turn on all the layers, use this button here on the ribbon there. Turn all layers on. There we go. Thought all the layers. So you can see we've got quite a complex, busy drawing here. So in this paint shop area, down here now, I'm going to create another view. So new view. This time call it top coat. All layers on. You could call it the HVAC plan, the electrical layout, the whatever you want to call it, the electrical, the HVAC, the piping and plumbing, or the building shell. Doing all layers on. OK on that. Oops. A view manager. All layers on. Edit the boundaries. I didn't pick the box, did I? Operator error. Operator error. I'll do it from there, look. There we go. That should be better now. I'll see if that works. Should work. Right. So we've made two views there. I'm now going to go to our ISO A0 layout tab. There's our sheet of paper and no viewports at the moment. So what you do now is on the layout tab, where we were before, on the layout tab, instead of saying create a rectangular viewport, now we can say insert a view. And there it is, top coat area and top coat all layers on. If I select the top coat area view, it comes up on the cursor and I can see how big it is on the screen. Now I'm thinking, well, I can get it a bit bigger on my sheet of paper there. So right click and change the scale to 1 to 100. And there it is, look, I can place it on the sheet at 1 to 100. And it brings it in with the layers on that particular view, and the viewport is set up 1 to 100 and it's locked. So it's automated the process of creating the viewports. But you need to know how, from the grassroots, what's going on. So let's go and insert the other view. All top coat layers on. Again, right click, change the scale to 1 to 100 and place that one just below it. And there we go, with all the layers on. So that's using the new tool there, insert view. I say it's not new, they do keep tweaking it slightly over the years. It's been there quite a few releases, but it's getting better and easier to use. So in my training courses, I do take people through the grassroots of making layouts and viewports, because if you're tasked with creating them, somebody has to make them in the first place. Putting the viewports in there is just one part of it, a step in there. So on my training courses, I go through all of this, showing how people how to set these up. So there we go. So that's creating the views. Okay, and it's just like any other viewport. Click on it, the one in the middle there, change the scale to 1 to 50, or pick the view, change it to 1 to 200. You know, it's just the same as before. It's nothing different. It's just a different way of creating viewports. Brilliant. Right. So that should resolve a few issues with viewports, viewport scaling. I haven't covered layers. There's a whole another area to cover with layers and viewports and viewport boundaries and plot, no plot, and all that business. I haven't got time to go through that. Time's pressing on. So let's have a look. The next thing I'm going to have a look at, annotative objects. Blimey. Now, people really do get themselves confused with these. Let's have a look at this. So I'm going to close this drawing. I'll close this drawing. Save changes. No. I'm going to open up another drawing now. Close that one to show annotative objects. So here we go. Load this drawing file up here. Now, this is one I use in the training sessions. So when I'm training people, this is the drawing file I use, so I'm familiar with this particular one. And I'm going to create I'm going to show you first of all the annotative objects and how they work, annotative dimensions. Dimensions indicate, don't forget it applies to text, hatching and so on. So dimension styles, I'm sure you're all familiar with dimension styles, but you can make any style, text, dimensions, leaders, you can make them annotative. So a style here called standard look on the dimensions. If I pick on the modify button on the fit tab, it's here, look. Now I'm sure you're familiar with these, setting your dim scale variable, okay, in there, 1 to 50, 1 to 100 or whatever. People used to make multiple dimension styles for multiple viewports. You have a 1 to 50 dim style, a 1 to 100 viewport style, and so on. Then they brought this feature out here, scale into the viewport. So you set your viewport 1 to 50, and you just dimension up in the viewport, and it automatically sets your dim scale. Well, nowadays you should be using this annotative option here. So you can take your existing drawings, tick that button and make your styles annotative, whether it's text, dimensions, or whatever. Now you have to be careful, because don't fall into the trap of making your text height 300 or crazy numbers in here. Because if you change the text height to be 300, you have to set your offset dim from line to be 200. Your arrowheads have to be 300. That's the wrong way to do it. Wherever you see a number, a numerical value in here, that's got to be what you want to see on the printed sheet, regardless of which method you use of dimensioning. All of these values need to be what you want to see on the printed sheet. 3 millimeters, 2 millimeters, 5 millimeters. None of these massive, crazy, wild values. So your text is going to be 3 mil high, and on the fit tab, it's going to be annotative, so it's going to scale it per viewport. So that's how you change an existing style to be annotative. I cancel that. Blimey, the time gets away from me. Close on that. So I'm going to go to the ISO A2 layout tab, and in here I'm going to have 2 viewports set up. I'm going to pick on the viewport boundary, so I'm going to copy this viewport across to there, and then stretch it, then copy it back over to there. So there we go. And then going to go in this viewport here. So viewports, nothing new with that. Going to this one, double click. I'm going to set this viewport scale to 1 to 1. There we go. And lock it. This viewport scale, I'm going to make this one 2 to 1. And lock it. Don't forget to force a regen to redisplay your line types. REA, regen all. Now the line types show correct. People mistakenly think there's something wrong with the line types and they don't display. They didn't force a regen. Keep forcing regens. Right, here we go, dimensions. I'm going to make sure I'm on the dimensions layer. There we go. Coming to this viewport. I can zoom in because it's locked. I'll pan across so you can see the viewport there. I'm in the viewport, in model space. Go to the annotate tab. A dimension style called 2 places. Place a linear dimension from this endpoint here to this endpoint here, and place a dimension just there. And it only appears in that viewport, because essentially we've told that dimension to appear when the viewport scale is 1 to 1. If the viewport scale is anything else, turn yourself off. The trick is to make sure that neither of these propeller type buttons down here are lit up. Don't have those lit up. That's what screw your drawing file up. That symbol, by the way, is supposed to, well, it does represent the cross section through a triangular scale rule. Remember those old triangular scale rules? Lots of you will be a lot younger than me. You won't remember those old triangular scale rules from years and years ago. You've got different scales on them. That's what it represents. Right, let me bang some more dimensions in here quickly, because time's running away from us, and you guys will have other things to do probably after this. You'll be sick of listening to me rabbiting on. I'm just going to grab that dimension. I missed that one there, look. Pop that in there, we go. Right, another one in there. And they are only appearing in the viewport they've been added to. They are not appearing in the other viewport. But don't forget, I'll repeat it again, make sure that these buttons are not lit up. They will cause you problems. They will cause you problems. I'm going to place another dimension up this side here. There we go, 25 mil. Now, there's no point showing these dimensions in this viewport because they're going to go off the edge of the viewport. This dimension here, however, no problem at all, we could display it here. So what should I do? This is the key to it all. I'm going to tell this dimension that it's allowed to appear when the viewport scale in this viewport is 2:1. I'm going to select the object. There it is. Right click, and there it is. I can add in other annotation scales. And it's added in 1:1 because that's the viewport I've been dimensioned through. I'm going to add in a viewport scale of 2:1. OK on that. OK on that. And there it is. But the key to it all is this dimension height here is going to print out 3 millimeters high. It will also print out 3 millimeters high here. It keeps the text height the same because it is annotative. Right, I'm now in this viewport and I can crack on and add some more dimensions, and I'm keeping on the same layer. I haven't had to create multiple dimension layers like folks get around it by creating multiple dimension layers. So I can add in the dimensions. I mean, I'm just putting them in random here. I'm adding just random dimensions because just for speed's sake. I mean, this isn't how you dimension this object up by any stretch of the imagination. I'm placing dimensions there, and they are only appearing in this viewport. Okay, but if I wanted to appear in the other viewport, like I did before, you click on it, right click, annotative scales, add delete scales. Now I'm going to tell it specifically just this one dimension to appear at 1:1. OK on that, and there it is. OK, I'll come back to this dimension, this viewport here, and say I want to do an arc length. Click on the arc, and place the dimension out to here. OK, and then do another one up the side there, aligned for this object out to there, and there we go. So it's placing them in the viewport at the correct scale. So it begs the question, can anybody tell me? Obviously you can't at the moment because you're all muted. What will happen if I set my viewport scale to, say, 4:1? What's going to happen to those dimensions? Have a think, because they are set up to display when it's 2:1. Yep, you're quite right. I can hear you all screaming at me. They're going to disappear. They're going to disappear. Sure enough, 4:1, and they disappear. So set it back to 2:1. There's a 2:1 dimensions, and go back to 1:1. That's my 1:1 dimensions, because the viewport scale is setting what appears at what scale. Right, another question. When I go to the model tab, where there are no viewports, what's going to happen to my dimensions? Good question. Right, let's nip back to the model tab now, where there are no viewports, and let's have a look. Model tab, and there we go. My 1:1 dimensions are showing. Make sure that none of these buttons are lit up down here. I was saying before, make sure they're not lit up. Otherwise, your drawing can look a mess. Looks all sorts of different sizes and scales and everything else. Turn those buttons off. They are the dangerous buttons. So what we have now down here is, this is not a viewport scale anymore. This is an annotation scale. So if I say these are the 1:1 objects, these are the 2:1 dimensions, these are the 4:1 dimensions. So if I go back to the 1:1 dimensions, I can now come into here and I can start to add in some more dimensions. I'll put a radius on that, pointing out to there. I'll put a diameter on that one, coming out to there. Okay, and I'll put another radius on that one, coming out from there, and so on. So they're all on the 1-to-1s, and the diameter on that one out to there. So if I go back to my viewport now, and sure enough, in the 1-to-1 viewport, they've appeared, but they don't appear over here. So let me just show you another drawing before time runs out. I can't believe how fast an hour goes, honestly. As I say, I'm used to talking for 3 days of my training courses. I'm not used to these webinars. I can't quite get my timings right, but never mind. Here we go. Let's look at this one. So here we go. We've got a drawing file here. And I've got a viewport set up here. So there's a viewport, look. This is on an A3 sheet, such as an A3 border. So I'm zoomed right in to a door there. Well, it is a door there. If I just unlock the viewport and pan it across a bit. So there's a doorway, look, and it's showing my viewport there at a scale of 1-to-2. So at 1-to-2, I can dimension up the door frame, the width across the frame, the door stop. I can dimension it all there. It'll all print out nicely there, dimensioning up all the door frame and the stop and everything else. Now, if I go into the viewport and if I zoom out, if I go to 1-to-5, there's my 1-to-5 dimensions. If I go to 1-to-10, there's my 1-to-10 dimensions. If I go out to 1-to-20, there's my 1-to-20 dimensions. Zoom out to 1-to-50, there's my 1-to-50 dimensions. Notice the text is still 3 mil high, even though I'm changing the viewport scale. 1-to-100, I can get the overall size of the building. Now, there'll be no point at all turning on the dimensions on that door frame on the 1-to-100 drawing, is there? Be ridiculous. No point whatsoever. But by setting up annotative objects, but if I go in and go back to 1-to-50, there we go to 1-to-20, there's the 1-to-20 dimensions, going 1-to-10, and 1-to-10 dimensions, 1-to-5, and then finally 1-to-2, and there we go. Right, let me show you what can be really dangerous here. If I pick a drawing up like this, I haven't got a clue about dimensions, how they work, or whatever, annotative objects that is, I don't know about them, and you have these buttons ticked down here. These buttons are ticked down here. You might not notice it, or even if you don't know what they do, then you can soon scream. If you start messing around with these numbers down here and start clicking buttons, suddenly your drawing does this. And oh no, what's happened here? Oh no, big panic on, major panic. Now, if anybody picked this drawing file up who didn't know about annotative objects, they would look at this drawing and they'd say, oh, who's messed this drawing up? And I can guarantee you, they will delete those dimensions. They will delete those dimensions because they don't know what's going on. And suddenly, you've lost all the dimensions off the drawing file. I'll go back to my layout tab. My dimensions have gone. There's no 1-to-2s. There's no 1-to-10s. There's no 1-to-50s. They've all gone because somebody started fiddling about those buttons down there and has screwed it up. So be really careful. In fact, I've had one CAD manager, he said, Steve, get those buttons off the screen so you can turn them off on those 3 bars in the corner and get rid of that one there, this auto scale. Look, if I hover over it, tells you. It says this button here, it will add scales. That's as you change the annotative, it'll add all the scales to all of the annotative objects. That includes text, dimensions, hatching, symbols. It'll add all the scales to all the objects in your drawing. How dangerous is that? No, get it unticked and you select the object and you do a right click, whatever it happens to be. There's a multi-leader. Right click, annotative scales, and you physically add in and delete the scales that you want. Go in there, and to resolve an issue, you can come into this and you can start taking out the ones which are the wrong ones. So you can just go into there, look, I don't want that one, I don't want that one, I don't want that one, and you can delete them to clean your drawing file up. But it can be a bit of a pain. Yes, you can go and select multiple ones. Look, click onto one, right click, select similar. You can do them all at once. I'll have to do it through properties. Yeah. properties. There we go. And in there, you've got annotative scales. I was behind my box there. Hang on. I'll click on that button there, and I can go and add and delete them en masse for that particular object. Yeah. So you can delete them en masse. Okay. So that can help tidy drawing file. Right. Well, it's already gone. It's already an hour gone. I can't believe how quick it was. Well, thanks very much, folks. I'm sure you've got other things to get on with. You might have other appointments, other meetings to go to. I could have kept talking for the rest of the day, but sadly, time's run out. Well, I hope you enjoyed it all. Don't forget, my email address is steve.crow@graitec.co.uk. I've recorded this session, so you're going to come back and go through it slowly. Then you can download it off our website. I'm going to convert it into a video file so you can go and watch it at your own leisure. And I'll just turn my webcam back on so you can see me. So I'm going to record it. It's all recorded, and then I'll save it to our website so you can download it and have a look at the screen off the lights of that there. Thanks very much, folks. And I'm running another session next week. I just can't quite remember what it is next week. But I'm running another webinar next week. So if you want to download them on all my other ones I've done, feel free to download those. And as I say, I cover all of this in our training sessions. If you're interested in training, get onto our website, see what trainings are on there, email our salespeople, and get yourself along. And hopefully can meet you face to face. Brilliant. Thanks, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope it's not snowing with you. It is here up in County Durham, County Durham in the UK. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers. Bye now.